And joining me is my colleague Jessica Taneja. Jessica, tell us more about Trump 2.0. What is he expected to do on day one in office?
Well, lots is going to happen on day one of the Trump presidency, Trump 2.0 presidency. This will be his second term in office, non-consecutive second term. And initially, as we'd seen during his campaign trail, many promises were made, but most would now see fruition, beginning with his actions on immigration, which you had just put out the soundbite from President Donald Trump, who spoke about what his initial actions would focus on, particularly also targeting the drug cartels and looking at this policy that we're now beginning to hear from Stephen Miller, who's the Deputy Chief of Staff of Policy. He has been briefing Republicans, according to the sources, about the Remain Mexico policy. So that limits that takes us to the first initiatives or the first executive orders that Donald Trump is going to focus on is Mexico. Now, beyond that, of course, we know there are more important things he also wants to focus on, especially when it comes to energy, deregulation of crypto. But those have not been made so much emphasis on at this point. But yes, pulling up funding from the defense, from the Justice Department, as well as working more towards from the Defense Department as well to fund the entire the process of putting migrants back on the border of Mexico is something that he's going to focus on, because there are millions of immigrants that he initially had promised he wouldn't let enter, especially the drug cartel. So that limits it to the border. But in the past, we've heard what Trump's priorities have been. And so far, what it looks like, he is set to deliver on those. But only time will tell on how it pans out.
Right.
And if you recall, in the past, in his last presidency in 2016, it was the Trump travel ban, the famous Trump travel ban, which saw, the end only with Biden's presidency. In fact, it was incoming President Joe Biden back then whose first executive order was to ban that travel that travel ban that the previous presidency had put in. So expect a lot of twists and turns, as well as what the president had promised during his campaign trail.
Indeed. Also, Jessica, Trump's in tray is full, but he's succeeded in taking one thing off the list, and that's the Israel-Hamas ceasefire. What are some of the other issues at home and abroad that might engage his attention in the days to come?
Well, if you look at how the last week has developed in terms of America's efforts to bring peace to the Middle East, both from the Biden administration, whether it's putting the deal that was initially planned in May, and then, of course, whether it's the Trump administration who sends a representative to Qatar for peace negotiation, for talks of this, for negotiation of on the border issues when it comes to Trump's team's involvement there, has been quite significant. And of course, a credit war even broke out to that extent. But Donald Trump's interest and his priorities when it comes to Middle East have been set out right even before his presidency, where we have a ceasefire deal in place. The hostages were returned yesterday, and so in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. So that has seen fruition, and something that he promised to the effect. Now, what also remains to be seen what happens on the Russia-Ukraine front, because he had initially promised to end the war in 24 hours. Now, if you go by what the Trump team says right now, they said now they need 100 days. Because it is an intricate issue and the terms involved in negotiation are much harder at this point with what you compare to the Middle East. So it's not going to be easy, although he has not given a lot of clarity on whether he would be meeting Vladimir Putin or not, but he said that could happen at the earliest. So we'll wait as to when that happens. But certainly bringing about a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine would be something he would want to focus on, given the fact that he's been asking his NATO allies and other European countries to increase their defense spending in NATO, and 2% of it would just not be enough. So, of course, there's going to be a lot of pressure on his European allies as well to do more in terms of continuing funding to Ukraine. And of course, his focus on Asia later to that would also look at how to bring about a trade balance with China, something that he says he would be interested in imposing even 60% tariff on Chinese imports if need be. Well, a blanket tariff of 20% still remains on Chinese goods. So the Trump trade war on China that we saw in the previous presidency, how does it unfold this time around? I think one will have to only wait and see. But tariffs is something you could expect. Even Canada, which he had initially proposed to be its 51st state. And let's not forget Greenland and the Panama Canal, because both of them have been his very recent focuses. So I expect a lot from the Trump presidency, and also because this is not the same Trump administration. It has the mandate, it has the House, it has the Senate, but of course the checks and balances of American democracy still remain in place.
All right, we'll leave it there. Jessica, thank you. Jessica Taneja reporting there on what to expect from Trump 2.0.